Okay, we're back. We're live for the 4 o'clock block. I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech. More specifically, this is Transitional Justice. And we're talking to Gilbert Nuwagira. He's in Kampala in Africa, and he's going to tell us today about the case of Dominic Ongwen, a child soldier. And we're calling this local justice versus international justice. We're going to dwell on the concept of complementarity. Welcome to the show again, Gilbert. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for having me, Jay, and I'm glad to be here with you as well.
So let's talk about this case. I guess putting it in perspective, this case happened in Uganda. I take it. Let's see a map of Uganda, and we can sort of place it geographically. Uganda between Kenya on the east and bordering the water. The Republic of the Congo, the Republic of the Congo on the west, South Sudan, a very troubled area on the north, Tanzania and Rwanda on the south. This is an area where there's a lot of things happening and a lot of trouble, I would say, just from our discussions with the Project Expedite Justice people. So can you talk about the case today of Dominic Ongwen? What happened to him? Where did he get involved in stuff that became so controversial and troublesome?
Yeah, maybe to throw a bit of context, you could put the map back and I can show the region that was affected by the LRA. You had bits of South Sudan and bits of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and going to as almost close to like as far down as Lira. All that area was, affected by the LRA, the Teso sub-region, going as far down there. And Dominic Ongwen was picked up in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So on 5th May, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, but some of the charges that he was found guilty of, including conscripting children, sexual and gender based crimes, and attacks against the civilian population. These were attacks which were systematic and were widespread. There was an attack in Pajule, an attack in Odek, Lukodi, an attack in Abok as well. And
those are all places in Uganda.
Those are all places in northern Uganda.
Yeah.
And you realize that these attacks are kind of within a time period from 2002 to about 2006. That kind of falls in line with 2002 to December 2015. At least it falls in line with the mandate of the Rome Statute, which began about 1999, but also kind of looking closely at when Uganda was able to become signatory and so Ongwen, being a top brass in the LRA, led a battalion which, by fact of command responsibility, committed atrocities that can be attributed to him as a commander and a leader in the army.
Can you talk about how he got to be a commander? If he was a child soldier, when was he first recruited, or how? And how was he recruited? And what did they do to train him and elevate him to a commander?
Yeah, the case of Dominic Ongwen, the LRA systematically to raise resources, food, and soldiers committed abductions, and part of the training structure was they would have these young boys and young men commit crimes like go into a community, kill someone or rape someone, to basically toughen them up and get them to be able to have the nerve to continue doing these kinds of acts.
All right, let me ask you this: what is the LRA? What does that stand for? And what is its operating area?
The LRA is the Lord's Resistance Army, and more broadly speaking, the operating area was bits of it extended as far as the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then came to bits of South Sudan, and went further down in Uganda as far as the Teso sub-region, and the West Nile was also not spared with some of the attacks. And of course, the West Nile was already troubled with some of the insurgency that was going on. And I think they also extended as far as the Central African Republic in some instances when they were pushed. Yeah.
That's west of Congo.
Yes, a little bit slightly to the north of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the Central African Republic shares a border with DRC and South Sudan.
So, how old was, well, I guess before I ask you that, why? And who's the Lord? Why are they doing this? Why have they done this? What is the point of it?
Yeah. So the very beginnings of this, Joseph Kony was served as a catechist and as not a catechist, as an altar boy in the church, and he was known for, he took things. Some people say he took things a little bit too far, and so it was a blend of mysticism and Christianity, and it was a kind of a blend of spirituality that he also used to have a grip on his on the people that he abducted and led, and of course when you look at the way the camps, the Lord's Resistance Army camps were organized, you had a central kind of place for worship that was there, and so he used that to also kind of have a grip on the people, and he said that he was getting guidance from the spirits, and when and where to attack, and that kind sort of thing.
But it's not a Muslim thing. This is homegrown, so to speak, and it's not out of the Muslim world. Am I right?
Yes, I would call it homegrown. In fact, it has more roots in Christianity than in Islam.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So now here's a young Dominic. How old is Dominic when he recruited and I suppose abducted himself?
They're about the ages of 13, 15 around, and like I said, that these abductions were systematic in a way that it was also a means for the LRA to get the human resource, so to speak, to be able to carry out the atrocities, and so they were getting child soldiers. They were also getting food from communities and basically extending their reach as well. Yeah, that's how a young Dominic Ongwen comes in, but systematically rises through the ranks as to become among the top brass by carrying out acts of violence, which were part of initiation, a killing here and there, a rape here and there, and being able to kind of go through all that systematically, so that they are the young boys are made numb and they can continue to carry and commit these atrocities.
So is it fair to say that his recruitment and training were voluntary or involuntary? I mean, how do you characterize that? Because he's young, he's impressionable. He may have seen this as a way out of an unpleasant set of circumstances. I mean, do people consider this voluntary or involuntary?
Yes, I think that has been a huge topic of debate, particularly with some of the returnees that came back from abductions, saying, okay, we do see a Dominic Ongwen in ourselves, in that we were there, we saw how things were happening, and it wasn't, when you are there, you have to survive, and survival meant that you have to do the things that you had to do. But also it begs the question from the people who stayed, the people on whom the atrocities were committed. They say that we we lost lives, our bodies were maimed, our lives were changed forever. So for us, we need justice, but also the people who return are asking what kind of or what form of justice can be accorded to us, because looking at what we also went through. So the debate was along those lines, and I think the Ongwen's team tabled a motion saying that he was mentally incapacitated, kind of rising on the grounds of all the circumstances, but that was overruled because he was able to rise to be among the top brass. But of course, looking at both the local and international justice perspectives, you kind of quickly realize that there is a whole vast arena of people who are along both sides of the divide, particularly in northern Uganda, who are saying, I think we should have tried him locally, and gone through the local ways to kind of reaching justice, get to a point of truth telling, and go towards restoration. But other people saying, no, our lives were forever changed, and we need to have a sort of one form of compensation, and this needs to be recognized, and so there is mixed feelings more broadly from the communities that we have been able to interact with and have worked with.
I can see. So, question though, this has been happening for a while, decades anyway, with these child soldiers, the LRA. The question is, was any government, Uganda government, for example, or Congo, or any of the countries around, did they have any effect in stopping the LRA? Did they chase them? Did they shoot them down? Did they arrest them? I mean, how were the governments in these areas dealing with the LRA?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In flashing out the LRA, it took a concerted effort of governments. I think in DRC and South Sudan. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that South Sudan was going through Sudan was going through a host of issues on its own. The eastern part of DRC has had its struggles quite a bit. So in a way, the government of Uganda, the UPDF, the Uganda People's Defense Forces, were sort of on their own, and there was support at one point even from the US to support kind of pushing back the LRA, and that is why. So there was political will from the DRC, and that is why. And that is how Dominic Ongwen was captured in the DRC. But a huge part of it was the push by the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Of course,
did the LRA stop? Is it still in existence, or did these governments, particularly in Congo or Uganda, actually stop them? Or are they still operating? And if so, how big are they?
Yeah, I mean, there have been reports that the LRA are still out there, but also unconfirmed in the sense of the scale of how they are operating, the scale of what they are capable of. But my understanding is, and my feeling is that if you haven't captured Joseph Kony, it's possible that they are still out there, and we do not know. For now, northern Uganda is very safe, and I think South Sudan is moving up towards the same. But I don't know how soon it will be completely safe. Central African Republic has had its own rumblings, but we don't know how much of that also can be attributed to the LRA.
Mm-hmm. So going along the lines of so many of our shows with the transitional justice and the Project Expedite Justice, These were atrocities, and it is important to achieve, a democratic state, that you have truth telling, you have commissions, and you have investigations and prosecutions, and you make the point clear that this is not acceptable. And I guess a lot of the people in Uganda feel that way. This is not acceptable, and they cannot tolerate this, and they want to prosecute and punish those involved, and they want to, I guess, tell the world what happened, and especially the Uganda people what happened, so that it's not likely to happen again. So, what is the role of Project Expedite Justice, and your role, for example, in making that happen? And how does that connect up with the International Court of Criminal Justice?
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful question. The project Expedite Justice has been working systematically with civil society, both in Sudan and in Uganda, to also amp up the levels of documentation, but also kind of support in the understanding, the core understanding of what are crimes against humanity, what are war crimes, what does genocide entail, what are the elements to these, and to also allow communities and staff, colleagues working with communities to be able to articulate and point out that, okay, this was done, this particular incident happened in such and such a way. They attacked from this end, and they knew people would flee from this angle, and picked them up and abducted them and made them carry stuff, and it was done again and again. So to be able to kind of map out and look at the patterns, and the Project Expedite Justice has been critical in with the trainings, in allowing civil society reflect on those particular patterns, but also kind of bring out the thinking of what in the Ugandan context, how can and what do war crimes look like, what do crimes against humanity, and reflect more broadly what does genocide look like, and questions like that. And my role has been working closely with again with civil society, and in my current role, and thinking more closely about the discussions that are happening, but also following much more closely and supporting the trainings on the understandings of these key concepts that kind of allow us to also reflect again and again on, okay, what does this mean for local justice and traditional justice, and what does it mean in the international justice system, and how can the two connect, and how do they then feed into communities perceiving and receiving justice, and kind of building towards restoration.
Okay, well, there's a lot in there. Let me unpack that a little bit with you. So your role is what? To educate people. It's to make sure they understand what happened, and they understand the definition of war crimes and atrocities, so they can, knowing the definition, they can take steps ultimately to avoid those things and maybe punish them. Is it that when you start out on this mission, they do not know? How do they feel when you first, begin talking to them, and how does your education change the way they think?
Yeah, I think that a huge part of it is kind of finding the language to kind of a language as sort of a basket or a port in which to kind of carry particular experiences. Because I think when we have had and done victim consultations in communities, people are familiar with what happened to them. People are familiar with the incidents that happened in their communities. And they can tell you word for word what happened on a particular day, and they have memorized it. But the language as sort of a basket to kind of gather all those experiences and be able to kind of situate them in is quite helpful, and I think is also therapeutic in many ways, as communities are also coming to places of reckoning and understanding. Okay, this is what happened to me. This and that, and this is how I can basically think of it as a war crime or as a crime against humanity. And I think that has some restorative of value and carries with it a certain degree of acknowledgement, particularly for communities, be it in a memory dialogue or in a victim consultation, as people speak to the issues that what happened to them, their experiences. Yeah.
There's comfort in knowing they weren't alone. They weren't the only one. There were others suffered the same attacks, and I guess the other part of it is it's personal. It's a psychology to make them deal with their own crisis and their own trouble as a result of the attack. I mean, anyone attacked is going to need some help in terms of the trauma of it, like PTSD, and I think you're providing that. But to go further, then, you also are involved in what we were talking about before the show, namely complementarity. Complementarity meaning help from other organizations that are outside the country, outside of Uganda, outside of the sovereignty of Uganda, and it's a delicate situation, but you want them to participate and help. You want the ICC to help, International Court of Criminal Justice, but it's something you have to be appropriately respectful of the relationship between Uganda and the Uganda people and these organizations from outside of Uganda. How do you approach that, Gilbert?
Yeah, I think a huge part of doing that and part of what is kind of having the technical expertise in terms of training, something that Project Expedite Justice is doing, but also to kind of reflect on what the needs are, and part of what civil society is doing is to kind of support the International Crimes Division of the High Court of Uganda, which expresses needs in particular areas. For example, having counselors on board. What we must make note of and remember is that the ICD attempts to mirror how the ICC operates. So what that means again is that the scale at which the ICC operates and the resources that the ICC has does not necessarily translate to the Ugandan context, and that is where civil society comes in to support and is welcomed by government, not to to interrupt the process, but to also support the process. And again, with the trainings that Project Expedite Justice does, it's the kind of thing that will trickle down to helping communities, map out their experiences and find language to capture their experiences, which has a value in terms of acknowledgement and knowing what happened, and in effect having a restorative value, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
You've described a multi-party kind of process. You have people who are victims, who were attacked, who need comfort. You have the Uganda people in general who want to make a better country and who need to be informed and involved in a process by which they can have confidence in their government, in their country. You're talking about the government of Uganda and the court system in Uganda. Most people are going to be, am I right, angry with the LRA. They're going to be seeking punishment, maybe serious punishment. At the same time, you have you have Dominic, who undoubtedly feels that he was swept up in something, and it's not entirely his fault. Whether he's right or wrong, I don't know. I'm not sure that I would give him a lot of credit for that defense. But then if he didn't know right and wrong, and he was swept up in something that was beyond him, then maybe that should be considered. And of course, you have the International Court wants to, minimize and avoid atrocities and war crimes wherever they are found. A lot of players in this game, and I wonder, is it working? Are the people who were victims feeling better? Are the people in the street feeling more confident? Is the government supporting this effort and seeking a better life for its citizens? Is the court system being respected in Uganda? Does the ICC feel that it has a working relationship? All these questions from all these various constituents, I can boil it down for you in one question. Is it working?
Yeah, I think that's indeed a loaded question. But the government is in effect doing its best to set up systems to make it work. The ICD is in place, and it has the personnel to support the prosecution of Thomas Kwoyelo. You have local leaders in northern Uganda who have been activated and are ready to kind of lead the processes on local justice, on what traditional justice. So there is a unique blend that is needed, and there is a call for it. The country does feel safer that the LRA is not in the country, but systems are building up, and I think that the direction that we're heading is a good direction. And with the support, the ICC stepping in and giving technical support, it's really helpful to get us there.
So are the prosecutions resulting in convictions and sentences? Is the public following this? Is the public satisfied with the result?
The public has been following very, very keenly and seeing what the processes entail. And Dominic Ongwen was given 25 years, but also, I mean, the question of, okay, what does this translate to the local man, and what does it mean for them? And people are saying, okay, we see that the international justice system is punitive. The crimes will be punished, but that will not take us back to where we are. So the restorative value in that is not actually realized. So that's why there has to be sort of a blend of the local and international justice system, so to speak, to be able to reach to the heart of what the kinds of issues that people had, and the sort of punitive justice that has been prescribed, but to kind of draw closer to them. Because given that Dominic, for example, was abducted as a child, there's so many adults now in northern Uganda who were abducted. They're wondering, what does it mean for me? I was forced to do the things that I did. Am I going to be taken to the ICD? Am I going to be taken to the ICC? Do I feel safe? And like we said, the LRA is somewhere silent. Probably the people who are probably thinking of returning, will they be able to return? Seeing what is happening, and so it's a myriad of issues that are happening all simultaneously. But I think we are fixing to get there.
Ah, wow! Is there a death penalty in Uganda?
There still is a death penalty in Uganda. Yes.
So some of these LRA people who did greater atrocities, I suppose, on a scale, they could be put to death. Has anyone been put to death?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we've only had Dominic Ongwen and Thomas Kwoyelo. The Thomas Kwoyelo trial is still ongoing, so we're yet to see what comes of that. Yeah.
Well, I only have one more question for you, Gilbert.
Yes,
Um, why are you doing this? What are you working out? And how do you feel about it? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling that your work is critical for the country? Are you feeling that you can help people and you are helping them? Are you angry?
I think I'm leaning towards optimistic, because for me, a functional justice system is a key ingredient for sustainable growth altogether. So if you want yeah, a country and a population to be um, um, content and satisfied, and be able to work towards development and growth, you had better have a functional justice system. And so working towards that, and looking at wrongs that were done in the past being righted is also critical for restoring faith, but also um, kind of creating a level ground for Ugandans to be able to participate in socio-economic development as a country, which I think is very critical for Uganda, because I think we have quite a lot to offer as a country, but we can't scrub off the years of war, the years that the war took away from us. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, it's very tragic, but I share your optimism. Let me also ask you this, though. Is it possible that the LRA will, it seems like it's not as active as it was, and the experience that Dominic Ongwen had, probably isn't being repeated, at least not in great numbers right now. But could this happen again? Could Uganda have the same experience with the LRA as it had before? Or are we past that now?
I certainly hope so. The likelihood of it, I hope it wouldn't happen again. But then again, I don't know how to, as a silent cartel, or the LRA, we don't know how strong they've been growing. We don't know, but I know for sure that the Uganda military has grown by miles from what they were in 2006. So yeah, I am hopeful that it wouldn't happen again.
Thank you, Gilbert. Gilbert
Thank you, Jay.
Nuwagira with Project Expedite Justice in Kampala, Uganda, building a better country in Uganda. Thank you so much, Gilbert.
Thank
It's
you, Jay.
it's wonderful what you're doing, and we admire you for your work.
Thank you for having me.
Aloha.